Welcome to the Balsa, your boat to the wonders of the world. Today, we're taking a closer look at the yew tree, the tree of death. I'm currently fighting cancer and have been undergoing chemotherapy. In a recent chemo session, I was chatting with my nurse about my medications, and she mentioned that one of my meds, Taxol, was derived from yew trees. I thought that was really interesting and decided to take a closer look into the trees. Yew trees are a species of evergreen trees found in parts of Europe, Africa, Iran, and Southwest Asia. For the purposes of this video, I will be focusing on European yew trees. The trees earned their nickname as the Tree of Death because of their toxins, which can be absorbed through the skin and inhalation. Yew needles, bark, and berries are highly toxic to humans, dogs, cats, and other pets. Yew trees are also a highly allergenic tree. They produce copious amounts of pollen, giving them an Opal's allergy scale rating of 10 out of 10. The only edible part of the tree are its berries. I know, I just said that the berries are poisonous, but the toxins only reside in the seed, so it's vital that it is removed before consumption. According to the Nature's Restaurant blog, yew berries taste sweet, but that it is a subtle flavor. I saw other people online comparing them to a sweet banana, almost like an apple banana. Apparently, eating the berry causes an extreme thirst sensation that lasts about 15 to 30 minutes. Yew berries are used to make tarts and jams. I took a closer look to see if the recipes had any modifications to counteract the thirst sensation, and I found that the tart recipe called for more liquid, especially juices, than most tart recipes I've made. The recipe even called for yew berry juice rather than using yew berry flesh. Perhaps there is something in the sugars of the juices that helps counteract the thirst, but I don't know for sure. I couldn't find any literature about that specifically. If I have time and can find the ingredients, I'll try the recipe and make a short about it later. Believe it or not, yew berries are not fruits. It is called a false fruit and is actually a modified conifer scale that can be eaten by birds. After birds eat the berries, they spread the seeds for miles through their droppings. Yew trees can grow to be hundreds of years old. The Ancient Yew Group has identified 978 ancient or veteran yews, which are over 500 years old in the UK alone. It's difficult to accurately date yew trees because their hearts rot and disappear. Some assert that the trees can be 5,000 years old, while others estimate a more conservative 2,000 years old. Yew trees are commonly associated with Christianity. Before that, they were held in high esteem by pagan religions. Janice Fry, an artist and yew expert and member of the Ancient Yew Group, had this to say in an interview for The Guardian. It's the tree of life, death, and resurrection, and it's known as the tree of life in all cultures across the Northern Hemisphere. Yew trees have the ability to regenerate and grow new sprigs from seemingly dead wood, such as from staffs and wooden beams, which fostered reverence for the tree. Yew trees are commonly used ornamentals in gardens. They're easier to care for and have a high tolerance for different environments. Since they grow tall and dense, they are often used as a tall hedging plant, either to line walkways or provide a privacy barrier. As a fun aside, yew trees are commonly found in churchyards in Europe. When I first began my research, I figured this was because of the religious connotations of resurrection that led to their association. I later learned that there was a far more practical reason. Village animals weren't allowed to graze in the churchyards and were kept out by walls. The yew trees were planted in the churchyards to prevent the valuable animals from being poisoned by yew berries. Before we take a closer look at yew trees in medicine, I want to reiterate that I am not a healthcare professional. Nothing I say can be taken as medical advice. In 1962, samples of Pacific yew bark were collected by researchers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, hoping to find anti-cancer properties that could be used to synthesize a new medicine that could cure cancer. After many years of research, the team learned that the yew tree bark had a cytotoxic activity, which means that the components are toxic to cells. In 1965, scientists were able to extract and purify paclitaxel in its pure form, allowing them to experiment in earnest to develop an anti-cancer drug. In 1979, Dr. Susan Ban Horwitz at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in Yeshiva University discovered specifically how paclitaxel worked. It prevents cells from replicating, sending them into apoptosis, or cell death. More importantly, paclitaxel was found to use a different mechanism than other drugs at the time, which could prove effective for patients who were developing drug resistance. This new paclitaxel compound is better known by its trade name, Taxol. After years of clinical trials, Taxol was approved by the FDA in December of 1992 for treatment in ovarian cancer. After additional research, the FDA also approved Taxol for use in breast cancer in 1994. Today, Taxol is considered one of the best plant-based cancer treatments available. Ironic for a plant known as the tree of death. While Taxol is the yew tree's biggest claim to medicinal fame, yew is also used to treat diphtheria, tapeworms, tonsillitis, epilepsy, muscle and joint pain, urinary tract conditions, and liver conditions. Some women use it for starting menstruation and causing abortions. The effectiveness of the treatments, however, is not conclusive. Further research is needed to refine the use of yew tree supplements. Yew tree has been traditionally favored in Europe for making bows for the past 600 years. The wood is very springy, allowing the archer to quickly pull back the bow when preparing to shoot. English archers would not carry their bows bent. When the bow was unstrung, the archer could use the bow as a staff in hand-to-hand fighting. These bows were usually 6 feet or 2 meters long and had sharpened points. The bows were cut from the trunks of yew trees rather than the branches, which reduced irregularities in the wood and created a stronger bow. Yew bow used in Scotland stretches back into prehistory. In 1900, a bow called the Rotten Bottom bow was discovered in a peat bog and dated to be 6,000 years old. The curious thing about this bow is that pollen studies show that yew trees didn't grow in the area 6,000 years ago. A commonly accepted theory is that the yew wood was obtained through trade, though historians aren't quite sure where the trade route originated. As the years progressed, the effectiveness of yew bows made them favored among archers all across Europe. Innovative Viking weaponsmiths created formidable bows that were unrivaled in power and range. Historians reference these yew bows as a contributing factor during the Viking invasion of Western Europe in the early 900s to mid-1000s. It was only the depletion of yew trees that led to the innovation of firearms by Queen Elizabeth I in 1595. In addition to providing the wood for bows, European archers used yewberry seeds to create poisons to dip their arrows. This made them more effective both in hunting and in war. There's some debate on which countries started using yewberry poison on their arrows first. One article I read credited the Babylonians, Greeks, and Romans. Yet another suggested that the Romans learned about the poison when facing the Astures in battle. My guess is that communities that knew about the poisonous properties of yew trees quickly figured out that they could use the poison on their arrows and other weapons. If you made it this far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're feeling very generous, leave a nice comment down below. Thanks! Throughout Europe, yew trees often represent life and death in mythology. As we go through some of these stories, I am so sorry if I mispronounce any of the names. In Asturian tradition, yew trees were connected with the land, people, ancestors, and ancient religion. Yew trees symbolize the passage between the world of the living and of the dead. In Ireland, a well-known ancient story is called Deirdre of the Sorrows. Deirdre was born during the reign of King Conor MacNesser of Ulster. Upon her birth, the druid Cahad prophesied that Deirdre would grow to become the most beautiful woman in all of Ireland. But with that beauty would come sorrow and war. While many in the king's service felt that Deirdre should be killed to protect Ireland, Conor instead decided to place Deirdre in the care of the poet Leibhric. When she came of age, Conor wanted to marry Deirdre so that he could have Ireland's greatest beauty as his own. Unfortunately for Conor, Deirdre fell in love with a young man named Nois. Both Deirdre and Nois knew that if Conor discovered their love, Nois would be killed. So Deirdre, Nois, and his 2 brothers fled north to Scotland, where they eventually settled in Glen Etive. As anticipated, Conor was furious when he discovered Deirdre had run away. Connachar devised a trick, sending one of his bravest and most loyal knights to Glen Atif to tell them that the king had had a change of heart and forgave them. Homesick, Noishe and his brothers agreed, and they, along with Deirdre, began the journey back to Ireland. Upon returning to King Connachar's castle, Connachar ordered his knights to seize Deirdre and kill the brothers. Cahad, the druid from the beginning of the story, saw Connachar's cruelty. He cursed the king and defected to serve Connachar's enemy, Queen Maeve. Connachar took Deirdre for his own. However, over the course of the year, the king grew tired of Deirdre's silence and disdain. He decided to give her to the man who had killed her beloved Noishe. On the way to her new husband, Deirdre threw herself from her chariot, where she died on the rocks beside the road. She was buried next to Noishe. 2 yew trees grew from their graves. It is said that the trees' branches intertwine with each other, and no one can part them. Some believe that the oldest yew tree in Europe is the Fontanel yew in Glen Lyon in Scotland. It could be somewhere between 2,000 and 9,000 years old. Legend says that Pontius Pilate, the same Pontius Pilate in the Bible, was born under that tree. The only problem with the story is that Pontius Pilate was born around 20 BC. The Romans invaded Scotland in 80 AD. Many believe that Pilate's father visited Scotland as part of a diplomatic mission. There, he fathered a child with a Caledonian woman. Upon his birth, Pilate was returned to his father to be raised in Rome. I should be remiss to leave out the story of Hecate and yew trees. In Greek mythology, Hecate was the daughter of the Titan Perseus and the nymph Asteria. She is the goddess of magic, death, and necromancy. The yew tree was sacred to Hecate. The trees were believed to cleanse the souls of the dead as they entered the underworld. Hecate's priests and priestesses would sacrifice black bulls draped in yew branches in her honor. As it says in Thebaid of Statius, a Roman epic poem published in 90 AD, "Let her lead them with torches of flaming yew. Let her give 3 swings of her mighty serpent, and do not let the heads of Cerberus be obstacles to those deprived of light." Yew trees make their way into modern storytelling too. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, the poison brewed by the witches for Macbeth include gall of goat and slips of yew, slivered in the moon's eclipse. The inclusion of yew in Macbeth's poison is believed to be used not only for the yew tree's potent toxins, but also because yew trees symbolize sadness and death, which, spoiler warning if you're avoiding spoilers for a 400-year-old tragic play, foreshadows the many murders throughout the play and Macbeth's beheading at the end of the story. My mom is an avid fan of British mystery shows. As such, I've seen my share of series. One such series is called Rosemary and Thyme. In the episode, The Tree of Death, the murder victim was shot by an arrow under a yew tree in the village courtyard.
What did I say? The Tree of Death.
This stuck out to me not only for the tree's reputation as the Tree of Death, but also because the murder weapon was a hand-carved bow, which is commonly made of yew wood. Yew trees are among the oldest living creatures on the planet. They play an important role both in the biological world and in human culture. Patrick Ness summed it up nicely in his book, A Monster Calls. The yew tree is the most important of all the healing trees, it said. It lives for thousands of years. Its berries, its bark, its leaves, its sap, its pulp, its wood, they all thrum and burn and twist with life. It can cure almost any ailment man suffers from, mixed and treated by the right apothecary. That's all I have on yew trees for today. Thanks for joining me in the balsa. Remember to like this video and subscribe to join us on more expeditions. If you have a video request, comment below or email me. That information, along with the sources for this video, are in the description box below. I'll see you on our next adventure.